Just a couple really quick housekeeping things, I think, before we get started. Um, we are recording this, so it will be posted to the WASA YouTube channel. If you want to go back or you want to share this information with someone who wasn't able to attend, good here.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. I am Jackie Scott. I am a statewide organizer with Wisconsin Youth Company and the Wisconsin Partnership for Children and Youth, and really excited to be joined by Jen today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jen Smith with the Wisconsin Out of School Time Alliance. I'm also working with the Partnership for Children and Youth. And so we're going to be chatting today about telling our stories through social media. And Jackie's going to really get us started thinking about what that might look like.
I'm gonna try, y'all, but what does advocacy look like? How can you promote your program through social media in order to make sure that people know about the good work you're doing? All right. I can't go to the next slide, Jen. So first thing I want you to think about, and I'm going to ask some people just to hop off mute and jump in here, is this sort of juxtaposition between what people think after school looks like and what does it actually look like. So what do you hear people think about after school? And perhaps, Jen, is this the wrong framing for some of these folks? Maybe aren't after school.
No, I think, yeah, what your program, what do
Yeah.
people think happens in your program, and what do you know is really happening?
What is actually happening versus what is the perception versus the
Hmm.
reality. So feel
Hmm.
free to either use the hand raise or hop off mute, throw it in the chat. What's the difference between what people perceive and what's the reality?
I see some people who look like they're typing, so that's good.
Where do I see the hand raise option?
Oh,
They react. There's a little heart,
Okay.
and then if you
Let
hit
me
that,
just
there's a,
try it. I know I already talked, but I want to try this. There we go.
there you go.
Um,
Yeah.
I noticed a lot of people just think about it as daycare and don't know all the academic and SEL type programs we're running.
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. That is across the board. It does not matter what age you work with. Uh, People have a tendency to think you're working with kids. It is daycare, it's childcare, as if there's something innately wrong with taking care of our children, right? But they have this misconception that that is daycare. And what other misconceptions do we have or perceive versus reality? Amy
There's
in
a
the
couple
chat.
in the chat.
Yep, Amy in the chat says it's childcare, unrelated at all to the school day, and the reality is there's an alignment to academics, and it is an extension of the school day in a fun way.
And there was another comment in the chat. They just play all day, but we
Hmm,
actually do educational activities.
absolutely. Um, yes, learning through play. They feel like they're not learning, but curriculum is being taught. And yeah, that's a huge misconception, right? Is that if kids are having fun, then they're not learning. But we know the reality of being with kids and mentoring kids and having time and space for kids, um, where they're actually enjoying what they're doing and they're engaged, they're going to be learning at a higher level. So that's why quality after school programming is linked in studies to academic success, even when you're not specifically just teaching academics. Um, and this idea that it's just a nice thing to have, but the reality is that these programs are absolute necessities for families, for working parents. Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, everybody, for that. Okay, so why share our stories? Well, this is exactly why you all need to be sharing your stories, is because our perceptions and our realities are not always aligned. And actually, for the vast majority of the public, even with public that has kids, most of our perceptions are outside. They're not aligned with what actually is happening in these programs. So then the question is, what is stopping programs from actually sharing their program or from sharing your stories? Um, and a lot of what's stopping people from sharing is lack of time, right? We know you're working in these spaces. You have a very, very limited time to actually do your job. So that is a barrier to some folks. Some folks not understanding like how to do social media. So we'll give you some tips and tricks today for some very basic things. We're going to make the assumption that most of you know very, very basics about the platforms. We're going to talk about LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, right? Some of the basics. And then how to use those, and then hopefully overcome some of those barriers that's stopping you from sharing your story. Because although time might feel like a barrier, it's absolutely imperative that we do share these stories to change that perception of how people view these programs. All right, so from Medford, Wisconsin, Dr. Terry Peterson, who also, if you did not know, was instrumental into creating the 21st Century Community Learning Center grants. So Dr. Terry Peterson has this quote that if not now, when? And if not you, then who? So we're talking about advocacy, and that's going to allow other people to understand how vital the work it is that you do every day. All right, so what do you need for effective messaging? If you can't do effective advocacy unless you have an effective message. So first of all, who are you talking to? Who is on your platform? Jen is going to get into the specifics around what time of day is best to use each platform, what platforms to use for which audience, and sort of why would you use one platform or another, and how do audiences change and shift? So be thinking about why are you doing this in the first place. If you don't know your why, you have to step back from your post and realign to what you're doing. That's first and foremost. Third thing, when you're talking about social media, you want to be clear, you want to be genuine, and you don't want to be overly wordy. We're not putting paragraphs and paragraphs of information. We're talking about social media. Get to the point, because you're dealing with people, and we all know our attention spans are like this, right? We are goldfish. We don't have memories. We don't have attention spans anymore. So what are you doing to capture people's attention? And Jen is going to do a really nice job of going over some ways that we can do that in a little bit too. Also, when you're thinking about messaging, what are you appealing to, right? You want to appeal to the head. You would want to use some data to back up, like what is the research and data behind your program, and some numbers behind it, as well as the heart. What are some personal stories? What are some touching things that maybe a parent said, or a kid in your program, or a staff member shared, and share those stories. Or maybe you have a cool event that was some like really touching message that came through, or a kid did a card to a program coordinator, and you want to snap a picture of that and put that out there. That's appealing to the heart. And then also, this is the one we often forget about, is gut. So we want data, we want personal stories, and then gut is, does this story ring true to you? Like, that's it. And if you have all three of those things in their line, you've got a good post. And then structure with a clear storyline.
Sorry.
That's fine, Jen.
It's a little quick on the button there.
So what actually works and what doesn't? We're going to look at some actual examples from our social media, from the Wisconsin Partnership for Children and Youth. So here are 3 different real posts. And in the chat, I'm going to ask you, and we're going to show the text below these in just a second, but I want you to look at the images themselves. And in the chat, I'm going to ask you, which one of these posts do you think is going to have the most interactions on social media. And this is in particular to LinkedIn. So that gives you a little bit of feel about you're dealing not so much with parents and programs and community members, but more so policy leaders and people that are running programs on LinkedIn. So which one of these do you think is going to have the most interaction? And we've got 3 images here. So first one, here are all of our 21st century sites. Second one here is a website talking about what's going on when those funds were being withheld last summer. And the third one, we've got an image of a program. And then Jen, can you go to the text that goes in lines with these posts as well on the next slide? All right, and then here is the text and then some tags. And then if you just want to throw in the chat, which one do you think had the most interaction? And if you're feeling brave enough and you want to either raise your hand or just pop off mute and say why, or say why in the chat, I'm curious to know which one, why you think the one that you think.
We have lots of 3s in the chat.
Depends on who is seeing it, the information. Oh, it's moving. What information they need. I would say 1 or 3. 2. Yes, the third one's showcasing programming students. It's visual. All right, do we want to see what the answer is for the actual interactions? Because social media, we get algorithms and it tells us on the back end how many people are actually looking at stuff, clicking on stuff, and viewing stuff. So the first one, to see visually, this is how many 21st Century Community Learning Center grants we have in the state. They're all over the place, right? And we can visually see that, really nice visual. We had a lot of people seeing that, and it is short and to the point, right? Very clear visual message. Second one, what the heck fell flat on this one? Well, it's LinkedIn, and it's a link you're going to click on to go to an article and read something. How many people are clicking on articles in their free time and reading them? Not a whole lot of people out there, right? So you could see how many people viewed this article. A big old whopping 0 people looked at this, right? So what's that telling you? We need to have different ways of interaction. This third one is a good representation. It shows you about the same number of people looked at this as the first one. You see we have more people interacting with this. We have more comments on this because it's an actual program that people can, for this one, they were interacting with their own program and saying like how awesome this post was, right? And that's what we want to see happen for your program, right? We want to see people interacting and getting to know the work that you're doing, and that's a good example of using tags, visual images, and then actual things happening in a program. All right, Jen? All right, so just to wrap this part up, what do you need? We as people, as humans, are storytellers. And that's what we ask you to do for your programs with social media, is to tell the story of your program. It brings us to bigger issues, fosters connections, and can bring information to life. We've got this beautiful Brene Brown quote: "We humans are emotional, feeling beings who on rare occasions think." Goes back to that example of above, right? We're not clicking and reading through whole articles. Rarely do people do that anymore. So how can you bring a story to life that has a real beginning, middle, and end, head, heart, and gut? And if you can make people feel, they're more likely to listen. Be authentic, use your voice, or if you have program coordinators and things like that, have them use their own voices and tell their story. Maybe it's a short video clip, right? Maybe it's a visual, maybe it's a really beautiful way of ending the day with like a daily joy that they share out. what does that look like and how can people authentically share that? When possible, connect your story to larger impact, right? We oftentimes silo ourselves out in these programs, but at the heart of this work, we're all better together. And when we can connect and share our stories and people see that it doesn't matter if you're in Pittsville or in Watoma or in Green Bay or in Milwaukee or in Madison or in Ashland, like we all have similarities across the board and that every single kid deserves to have access to these programs. And by sharing these stories, we're going to get closer to there. And we can do that by sharing an authentic message. Also, are you talking about the larger impact? Do you have rich visuals, meaningful, relevant information? And then this is something for you to think about for your own program. So what do you have happening right this second? Oftentimes when we think about social media, we think about, oh, I have to have this giant event. I have to be doing a lights on after school event. I have to be doing this special families coming in, or maybe we have an elected official coming into our program. There has to be something going on. No, you have to tell the story of what you do on a day-to-day basis so people stop thinking about it in a way where it's not accurate, right? They have to stop thinking about what you do as childcare. So if you're only looking for like a special event that you do every 3 months, then people are not going to break out of like that daily cycle of not understanding how powerful it is and how important it is, this work that you're doing. All right, so what you do on a daily basis. It can be small stories. It does not have to be huge. So think about that and how you can share your own stories through social media. Now, Jen, I think you're going to get into how people can actually do this and use this information and get some tips and tricks for posting and that kind of thing. So I think it's your turn.
Yep, it is. I'm curious if anybody had anything that came to mind when Jackie asked about what you might be able to share. Anybody have anything that kind of popped up? These are the challenges, right? Creating content. Again, day-to-day happenings, right? It doesn't have to be high level exciting. We're having this huge event, but kids engaged in this really cool project, and this is what they created as part of our program. And so we can share that story, and that level of storytelling is going to be ongoing. We'll be able to do that week to week, highlighting something that happened every week in our program space, right? That's not necessarily kind of this huge happening, but just something that's happening regularly to reshape that perception of what's happening in our programs so that people are really seeing kind of the reality of what's going on day to day and what we're doing. All right, so we're going to jump into a little bit of how to. If you have questions as we're going through this, let me know. We have a small enough group, you can just unmute and ask, or you can throw it in the chat. But we're going to start with visuals because social media is very much a visual platform. And so as we saw with Jackie's examples, the article that really didn't have much of a visual fell pretty flat. And the stories or the posts that had some of those clear visuals had much more engagement. And so when we think about visuals, videos are the most engaging. So videos are better than graphics, which are better than images, which are better than stock images, which is better than just text, right? So the more interactive, I would say, like if we have a video or if we can create an animated graphic, right, that's going to be much more eye-catching for people as they're scrolling through social media. If it's a stock image that looks like, you know, this glossed over professional picture of kids that probably don't live in my community, not going to be as interesting, right? So the more organic and natural and engaging, the better the visuals are going to be. Question, I see your hand up.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit more what you mean by graphic?
I am going to jump into that. So
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
I will absolutely do that. No, thanks. You're foreshadowing what's coming next. I appreciate that. I'm going to talk just briefly about videos first. One of the things with videos, because we are working with minors, we do need to ensure that we have a media release for any images or videos that we capture that have young people in them. Many programs I know have releases like that as part of their enrollment paperwork. So if you don't, that is something to keep in mind, that you cannot publicly share images of minors without having consent from parents or caregivers. So you want to ensure that you have that release. When we're thinking about videos that we can upload directly to the platform, like Facebook or LinkedIn or TikTok, right, is going to be better than linking them to YouTube or Vimeo. Often, when people are in a social media platform, they're not going to click on something that's going to take them someplace else. And so that's really what we call a native video, right? So uploading the video directly to the platform so they can just stay right in there and watch it is really what we're going to be is going to be the best way to do that. If you're not showing faces, if there isn't individually identifying characteristics of individuals, I would say you probably don't need that, although I would encourage you to double check with your organization or I guess someone who maybe has more knowledge about that than I do. That seems like a legal question. And so my initial response is I don't know that you would have to if you can't identify any of the individuals in the image. But I don't want to give you inaccurate information. Jackie's shaking her head. Okay. So the two of us are saying you probably don't. Videos that are people centric, right? So that are focused on human beings are going to be more engaging. And you don't really need to overproduce your videos. And so I think sometimes, and this, I'm guilty of this myself, we sacrifice good because we're going for perfect. And the reality is getting the message out in an organic way is going to be more important and actually more likely to gain traction than something that looks too overly produced. So this image is actually a video that a high school student made of himself outside talking about why his teen program was so important. It's a pretty organic, simple video that he made with his phone outside talking about the value of his program, right? And so we uploaded that to some social media platforms. It had a lot of engagement around why kids see value in what they're doing in after school day to day. Doesn't need to be overly complex or fancy, right? And I think those more real and organic messages, people are really looking for those, especially I feel like currently because so many things are artificially created that they're unrealistic, right? And so the human element I think is really important. If you have an interest in learning how you can start recording videos in your program with kids in your program, make this an activity that you're going to do in the context of your program. I'm going to put this link in the chat on the WASTA website on the STEM page. Under page navigation, if you click on PBS Wisconsin, it'll take you down to the segment on the right. We have a pre-recorded webinar with PBS Wisconsin on how to start incorporating media production for beginners. You don't really need to know how to do much technologically. If you have a phone, you can start media production for beginners. And he has all kinds of information and resources. There's a slideshow, additional links, and a highly engaging activity for young people to create their own videos. So I would encourage you to take a peek at that as a way that you can bring some videos to life on your social media page. All right. Graphics is the next best, right? As we're kind of working our way through what visuals are the most engaging. So graphics really are a way to lift up or highlight, add some additional flavor, color, eye-catching elements to your images, right? So you have these great pictures of kids in your program, and we can really level those up by putting them in a graphic, right? So I could put the 3 pictures of the kids in that Hayward After School program. I could just have those as individual images, or I could put them in sort of this larger graphic post that really is much more eye-catching, right? I'm going to notice the colors, the little cute handprints that are up there. That's probably going to catch my attention as I'm scrolling through my feed. If you are not familiar, Canva is a very basic graphic platform. It has a free account. It doesn't cost you anything. They have templates, so you can look for social media templates specifically, and they'll give you all kinds of suggestions, and you can just change the wording, plug your images in, save it, and you're good to go, right? So it's a pretty user-friendly platform for you to create kind of more engaging visuals or any of the images that you might have for your program.
Jen, this is also a great example of a program with release versus not a release. You can see faces and pictures versus not.
Thanks for pointing that out, right? So the kids, you're looking at them from behind, and the other video and the other visuals, and one visual and the other you're seeing the kid's face on. That's awesome. You can also use graphics without images, right? So if you want to highlight a particular event, or like Youth of the Year, right, that the Boys and Girls Club was highlighting, if you want to highlight, we're doing something to celebrate Children's Mental Health Awareness Week, you can create a graphic for that. Data, which Jackie talked about, maybe you want to have an image of something that's happening in your program, and then you want to have a little snippet of data that's related to that. Like, there are kids on the waiting list who can't get into these programs, right? Because we don't have adequate funding and staffing to support these programs, and encouraging people, to support programs in their communities, right? So there's lots of ways that you can kind of connect what's happening with some of this information. And then I see the chat that Canva also has an app that you can add captions to a video. Thank you for adding that. Little tips and tricks, right? So a lot of ways that we can kind of utilize some of these tools to help us make our lives easier, right? Work smarter, not harder. You can also create GIFs, which are animated graphics, right? And in Canva, when you create kind of a template, you can select to add animation. So you can make it as simple or complex as you feel comfortable doing. The one caveat here is only certain platforms allow you to use GIFs. So it may not be worth your effort and time to create these if you're posting on Instagram, because Instagram, you can't use GIFs. They don't post. It just shows an image, right? So kind of know before you put in the effort to create something. When we think about images, humans are better. Unless you're highlighting, like we just got this new really cool STEM equipment, right? Then you can maybe highlight an element of your programming like that. Or maybe you have a therapy dog that comes to visit once a week. And pets, people love pets. Animals are also very engaging. So maybe you just have a really cute picture of your therapy dog that you're going to post. Candid pictures are better than posed when possible. And maybe you're highlighting a group of kids who did something that was particularly cool. They collected donations for the local Humane Society. That might be a post picture of kids with their donations. But pictures of kids actually engaging in activities that are a little bit more candid are going to get a little bit more attention. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I was going to say about the images. I'm off my slide notes. I don't leave anything out. I guess I'm just avoiding stock images, which I kind of mentioned earlier. Less engagement when people see things that look a little bit too polished and maybe artificial in some sense. All right. So any questions about the visual element of posting? All right. So when we're thinking about posting, there's two pieces that Jackie brought up earlier in the post that she had shared as examples, as ways to really garner some additional engagement with our posts. One way is by tagging other accounts in your posts. So if you are highlighting a trip that your group took to a local business, right, and you tag that organization in your post about that trip, that increases the likelihood that more people are going to see that post. So in this example, we highlighted the Boys and Girls Club of Portage County and the Marshville Clinic Health System, both fairly big organizations, right, in the central Wisconsin community. And because of that tagging, we did get more engagement with those posts. I think we had almost 1,000 views on this post. And I think that's very likely because we tagged those organizations when we posted that. So when we think about tagging, it's like calling out an individual person in a group conversation, right? So here's this really cool thing we did. And hey, by the way, I want you to see that we did this thing, right? And we did it with you. So I want you to see that we shared this information. And so it notifies the person that you tagged, right? So they'll get a notification that says, hey, this group tagged you in their post. And then depending upon their settings, it might show up on their page, or they may see that notification and come and interact with your post. Maybe they'll like it, maybe they'll make a comment, right? And we will discover in just a moment that every one of those comments, likes, helps boost what you are trying to do with social media, right? It's all about the engagement. All right, the second element is hashtags. So when we think about hashtags are really connecting to a bigger idea or concept, right? So this post was posted over the summer about a summer program. We did a hashtag for summer learning, a hashtag for 21st century learning, right? Those are kind of bigger ideas that are related to this particular program and what they were doing over the summer. And so when we think about hashtags, it's kind of like putting a label on a file folder and saying, this is what we're talking about in this post. And so if you are in Facebook and you want to search 21 century learning, you will get all the posts that have that as a hashtag, if you follow their account or not, right? And so you could see everybody else who's posting about similar things. If you use the hashtag after school works or the hashtag extended learning, right? Any of those hashtags are really kind of identifying that this is talking about kind of a particular topic that is related. So any questions about tagging or hashtags? All right. At the conference, we had more questions about tagging and hashtags. So I'm going to say either I explained it a little better or you all have a stronger base knowledge. Could be, or a little of both, maybe. Yes. Question.
Is there a certain way you like figure out which hashtags to use or a way to like find ones that would get you more engagement?
That is a really great question. And I actually started compiling some common hashtags But it's kind of just sitting right now. So I need to figure out the best way to share that out, but I can certainly share it via email with everybody who's here. And there's some, thanks for joining us. There are some that are like national hashtags, right? Like After School Works is part of a like national campaign to lift up school age programs. 21st Century Learning is also another kind of national campaign. So there are some that we know are more broadly used that I think would be helpful to have. And certain organizations, so depending upon what your program looks like, or if you are affiliated with another organization, like Boys and Girls Clubs have their own hashtags, YMCAs have their own hashtags. And so if you're a Y program, you should probably be hashtagging the Ys more broadly, because then you're going to be connected to some of those other Y posts. So it may, your posts might start to infiltrate some of the broader Y posts if you're using kind of those similar consistent hashtags. So I can send out what I have started, knowing that it is incomplete and it is kind of an ongoing document. A great question. So these are just 3 examples of program posts that I just went out and pulled off of these 3 platforms, which is really what we're going to primarily focus on today. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, they kind of all have a conglomeration of the things we've talked about. Some use graphics, some use very kid-focused, in-the-moment images, some have hashtags, some have links, right? So just kind of visual representation of what programs are currently doing out there on social media. If you just went out and looked, there are some people who are already doing some of this stuff. And these are just kind of examples of what it looks like in real life, right? Not posts that Jackie and I have created, but posts that other programs have created that are just kind of out. All right. I'm going to do a quick review just of the different platforms, and we're primarily going to focus on what I think are the big 3 that people generally are using: Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Before I start, though, I am curious to know if any of you currently have social media, and if you do, what platform or platforms you might be using. So you can just throw that in the chat, or you can unmute. Are you already doing some of this? And if so, where are you posting?
We post on Facebook and Instagram, and we just started a TikTok.
Oh, TikTok. Yeah, that's awesome. And Facebook. Thank you. Instagram and Facebook. Those are kind of like the biggies. TikTok, I'm fascinated with TikTok. I just don't have the capacity to create that many videos in a week. But I love the idea of TikTok. And I will tell you that on TikTok, I follow a school counselor who talks about creating safe spaces and how can you de-escalate and all. Yeah, I mean, just like great content, very short snippets. I think it's great. Okay, Facebook, but I barely use it. Right. And that's the other piece of it, is it is hard. It's hard sometimes to be consistent. So a lot of Facebook, it seems like, is really kind of the big. All right. So I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. I'm just going to give you some general data about kind of the 3 most commonly used platforms. Facebook, Jackie and I have had many a discussion, because Jackie just does not believe that a quarter of the Facebook users in 2025, summer 2025, were between 25 and 34. It is a myth that it is mostly old people that are using Facebook. And actually, half of Facebook users were under the age of 40. And so when we think about Facebook, it's kind of an even split between men and women. Facebook really generally is the best platform if our goal is to connect with families and people in our community, to let them know what's happening in our programs and kind of share out, these are some upcoming events, right? So it's kind of it's a nice platform if we're looking to really connect with those who are more directly engaged with our program. So what works on Facebook? Positive story, youth voices, right? So kids thinking about things that they like, or even images with just a quote visual on there. People centric, behind the scenes, right? So things that are not overly polished, but this is what it looks like when the staff is getting ready before the kids show up, right? A little peek behind the scenes is a little bit more engaging. Things that are relate to parents and families, things that relate to other professionals who are doing work supporting kids in after school or other spaces. Some pop culture references, light humor. You can incorporate external links to Facebook. Although, again, that should be intermittent because most people are not going to click on a link and leave the platform, but they do work. And so sometimes maybe you're doing a drive to collect something and people might be more motivated and engaged, especially if they participate in your program. And so they might be more likely to click that link. But a link to some article, probably less interest, right? So you're going to kind of gauge. Policy, jargon, opportunities is like, hey, come listen to me tell you about this great thing that you could do. Less traction with those kinds of things on Facebook. I think there's a lot of people trying to market and sell stuff. And so people tend to kind of scroll by things that look like what they perceive as those kind of opportunities. And GIFs don't work on Facebook. And I say sort of because you can use them in comments on other people's posts, but you cannot post a GIF as a primary. It's kind of interesting. But you can react to other people's posts using GIFs, which can be kind of fun. Facebook, highly influenced by your activity. So the more you are posting and engaging with other people, the more the algorithm is going to push you out to people, right? So that is the challenge, I think, for a lot of us with many of these platforms, is having the time to consistently post and then to also have the time to make sure that we're at least to some extent interacting with other people or other organizations, because that interaction is what boosts our being seen, right? So carving out a little bit of time to do that can be the challenge. When we look at the best times to post, it's interesting. It's almost always during the workday, and Jackie and I kind of chuckle about that. People are scrolling their feeds. But this darkest blue here are the times of greatest engagement on Facebook. So really kind of like anytime between 9 and 1 weekdays is when Facebook is most active. So that gives you a little bit of direction when you're thinking about, oh, we had this really cool event. It happened at night. You don't have to post it in real time, right? Take the images, create a graphic, and post it a day or two later during a peak time where we know there's a lot of engagement happening.
And also, anybody that is on their phone on Facebook right now is aligned to the highest user interface right now. It's happening.
Yes. Yeah. And Chase, I appreciate the comment. Your analytics might tell you when the people who actually interact with you, when that time is. So that 6 p.m. is probably specific to when people are interacting with your content. But in general with Facebook, that is when most people are interacting with the platform, is kind of during the daytime during those. So that's a good point to kind of recognize that there is a little distinction there. All right, LinkedIn has a lot of growth recently. I would say in the last few years, LinkedIn has grown pretty significantly. This is interesting. Sorry, I'm throwing myself off. I have LinkedIn and then I see it says Instagram. So there's kind of a typo. I have a my slides. Sorry, I confused myself. So that should say LinkedIn. About half of them were age 25 to 34 in 2025 who are using this LinkedIn. And it's really more focused on kind of professional content. LinkedIn used to be viewed as more like looking for a job and making connections for employment. It has really expanded beyond that to sharing information and resources and tips. That's a little bit more professionally focused, but not pigeonholed to kind of that employment. All right. So this is the one platform where you can use longer form. So you can post an entire blog on LinkedIn and it will still get engagement where all that text on other platforms is not going to get that same level of engagement. Uploading videos directly to LinkedIn, right? So people can watch it right there. Tips and tricks, again, visuals, external links work on LinkedIn. GIFs also work on LinkedIn. It's one of the only ones where they do as a primary post. LinkedIn doesn't like silly so much. So overly silly posts or just fluff, like I'm just posting something to fill space on my timeline, is kind of filtered out by LinkedIn. So when we talk about their algorithm, their priority is quality. So that's why they kind of filter out some of that more fluff and silly stuff. They really are looking for higher quality content. When you post something on LinkedIn, it gets shared with your immediate connections. And so if those immediate connections engage and interact, then LinkedIn will share it out beyond that first inner circle. So it kind of is an inner circle, and then if people engage, then they share it out more broadly. So making sure that you're following other organizations or that you're, kind of they're following you, you're following them, helps with that kind of initial ring of engagement. And again, during the workday, during the week, is when most people are engaging in LinkedIn. All right. Lastly, Instagram.
Jen, can I jump in just real quick on LinkedIn? Because I think
Please do.
Important for folks who are posting is to understand, like, a lot of elected officials and policy makers are on LinkedIn and interacting on there, and people who are running and directing organizations. So that is a great place when you're talking about changing perceptions and getting funding into programs and things like that. If you don't use LinkedIn, it is something to consider for your organization because you can connect to a lot of people, in particular people who have power.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Jackie. Absolutely. Larger organizations, even community foundations, United Ways in your community, any of those kind of more formalized entities, LinkedIn for sure is going to be a good space. All right. Instagram, about 30%, just under 30% were in that 25 to 34 age range. Instagram users spend a lot of time in Instagram, about a half an hour a day. They're kind of just scrolling through what's going on in there. What works? Instagram is very image heavy, not so much text heavy, right? Instagram actually leads with the image at the top of the post and then the text is below it, where Facebook and Instagram, it's the opposite. It's much more focused on like entertainment, pop culture, positive stories, celebration, youth voice, people centric, right? So if we really want to focus on just highlighting some of the cool things we're doing and not as heavy on maybe some of the deeper content, Instagram is a good space to do that. External links do not work in Instagram. GIFs do not work in Instagram. And in general, promotional posts like, hey, come do this thing with us, tend to not work as well on Instagram either. So if your primary focus is engaging with families and sharing out information about your program, Facebook is going to be better for that than Instagram. As far as like the Wisconsin Out of School Time Alliance, our Instagram page has the least amount of interaction across our platforms. So if you have to pick and choose, I would probably have Instagram be less of a priority for your time than Facebook or LinkedIn. Instagram is based on kind of this ranking algorithm. So it's based again on kind of interactions with other posts. So Instagram really requires you to be an active user of the platform in order for your content to get engagement. So if you are not liking and commenting and doing things with other people on the platform, your stuff is probably not going to get, because they kind of rank you based on how much you're engaging. That's that algorithm, that's right, trying to keep you in there as much as possible. And Instagram, again, same time frame, has the greatest amount of engagement, right, during these work hours during the work week. Not so much Saturday or Sunday. So if you maybe don't have enough data about when your followers specifically are engaging, right? Maybe you don't have enough to give you those analytics yet. This is a good kind of guide when you know most people are active on this platform. All right. So when we're thinking about like how am I going to use social media, it helps to have a little bit of a plan to kind of keep us focused. And we don't want to make it too hard, right? So we're not being overly complex, but deciding what really is our goal. Is our goal to connect with families and share information and connect maybe on a more local basis? Facebook might be better for that. Do we want to really spend time ensuring that we're connecting with policymakers and decision makers? Then maybe I want to add LinkedIn, right? And if I want to create just some awareness and some fun engagement around what's happening in my program, maybe Instagram. And I'm going to prioritize based on what is most important for me, which one I'm going to start with. And then maybe I can do two if I have the capacity, right, to do that. So don't try and do all the things. Pick what you're trying to do, and then pick the platforms that are going to help you do that most effectively and efficiently. Make sure that you have a program page and that it's, not an individual page, that you have the name of your organization or your program is the page, and it's not Jen's page that's sharing this stuff. Create a content calendar. It can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it. It can be putting a reminder, writing in on your calendar that I'm going to do this twice a week, just to remind yourself and commit that 2 times a week I'm putting something, because I know the level of engagement, consistent and over time, is going to really drive if people are seeing what I'm doing or not. I have a little spreadsheet that helps me to stay organized. And as things come up, I just plunk it in, because then I don't have to remember it. It's there. And then when I go to schedule, I just have 1 day a week where I go in and I decide what I'm going to post. I have a bunch of stuff there because I kept adding it as I came across it. So it makes my life a little easier. Not everybody has time or interest in doing that, so you don't have to be that complex. But however you want that calendar to look like, just to help you stay a little bit more accountable to making sure you post consistently. Thinking about some sort of policy. Who's doing the posting? How are we interacting with posting? Do we want staff posting things? Should they be tagging us or not? How, what do we want that to look like? Have some parameters on what's okay and what's not. And then deciding after several months, do I feel like this is working? I carved out this time. I'm posting twice a week. Have I garnered more followers? Am I getting more engagement? Or is all this time and effort that I'm putting in not really giving me what I had hoped? And then maybe I need to reevaluate what I'm doing. Think about doing something differently or what that might be. All right. Any questions about that? I feel it's a bit of a whirlwind. All right, Jackie's going to bring us home in our last couple minutes here.
All right, got 3 minutes to wrap up. All right, collective impact. So this is all about why do we do this? Like it is about your own individual program, but more so it's about the field as a whole. Like we all do better when we all do better. And when we can take the time to post about our programs and the cool things that are happening on an everyday basis, and the champions that you are for the field and your staff is, and the impacts on kids and families and working parents that without these programs wouldn't have jobs, some of them, right? So these are very real, and the skills and interests that kids are able to make, and the connections and relationships and social skills and all of it, right? That all gets better when this field gets treated better, and this field gets treated better when the public understands this work in a more real way. All right. These are all of the after school programs across and summer programs across Wisconsin. So
There's a lot of us out there.
huge, especially Green Bay, Madison, and Milwaukee spreading out. There's some deserts out there, but not many. There's a lot of programs.
Mm-hmm.
And then to close us out, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has, right? And that applies to a lot of things, but that applies to your work. And thank you for taking the time to do this extra step, because in doing this extra step in promoting your program, you're helping the field as a whole. And honestly, you're making the world a better place. And I know it sounds cheesy or whatever, but it is so true, because you care for the most important people, and that's our young people. So thank you for the work that you do.
Yes, well said, Jackie. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you joining us today. We'll stay on if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording and I will send a follow-up email to all of you. We hope you have an amazing rest of your week.